Welcome to the Darkest Dungeon mod spotlight, where I will showcase a modded hero and explain their mechanics. Today we will be taking a look at the Twilight Knight, created by Balgin Stondraeg. Twilight Knight is a monster hunter, used to fighting large beasts one-on-one. She struggles with the bond she shares with her sword. Sometimes she can hear it whisper to her in the darkness. Twilight Knight is a frontline warrior with good damage and powerful stress healing capabilities. Her primary weakness is lower accuracy and difficulty hitting the back two rows. The Twilight Knight boasts a powerful stat line. She has very high damage, stun resistance, and movement resistance. She has above average health, dodge, blight resistance, and debuff resistance. She has average critical hit chance, disease resistance. She has below average speed, trap disarm, and very low bleed resistance. However, overall, she has stats in all the right places. Like I said, she has some good health and very good damage, so it's everything you want a frontliner to have, I think. The Twilight Knight's first and most basic attack is Soothing Slash. It can only be used against the enemy's front two rows, and it heals the Twilight Knight's stress by 4 to 8. This is your bread and butter. You're going to be using it a lot, and it helps keep your stress down. It's very useful.
Another abomination, cleansed from...
The Twilight Knight's second ability is Whirlwind Attack. It can be used against both the second and third row of the enemy team. It is the Twilight Knight's only attack that hits the third row. It has a damage penalty of 60%, and it knocks them back very similarly to the Arbalest's Bolas. It's not going to knock them back too often, but sometimes you can shuffle the enemy a little.
The pitch of battle. Press this advantage. Give them no quarter.
The Twilight Knight's third attack is Slay the Beast. Again, it can only be used against the front two enemies, but it boasts a massive 30 to 70% bonus damage versus Beasts and Eldritch, scaling with rank. However, after you use it, the Twilight Knight debuffs herself for 40% damage and 20 dodge, and she marks herself for 1 turn. This is a powerful ability if you want to finish off a strong enemy right away, especially if the battle's going to end. But be careful using this too early because you're going to hurt your damage for the next couple of turns.
Back to the pit.
The Twilight Knight's fourth attack is Strike to Stun. It can only be used against the front two enemies again. It has a damage penalty of 60%, and it stuns the target with normal stun scaling, the same as like the Crusader's stun or the Vestal's stun. And it debuffs the target's stun resistance by 15% for 2 turns. So if you fail the first time, you can try again the next turn, and you might have a better shot then. The Twilight Knight's fifth attack is Anticipation. The Twilight Knight activates Riposte for 2 turns. This Riposte has a damage penalty of 30%, and every time the Twilight Knight ripostes, she gains 1% crit for 3 turns. Additionally, the Twilight Knight marks herself for 1 turn, and she buffs her dodge by 4 to 12 points. This is her only method of hitting the back row, assuming the 4th row even attacks the Twilight Knight. But this can be a good way to boost your damage, boost your critical hit, and draw some fire away from the rest of your team. Twilight Knight's 6th ability is Glimmer of Hope. This is your party stress heal. You heal everyone in the party, including the Twilight Knight herself, by 6 to 14 stress. Then you gain 6 Torchlight, and the Twilight Knight gains 2 to 6 stress per target heal. So she gains 8 to 24 scaling with rank total. Then she marks herself for 1 turn. This is a pretty strong stress heal. I was using it and I was able to keep my party at no stress without any problems. You just keep using this until most of your party is pretty low on stress, and then you use Soothing Slash until the Twilight Knight stress is low. The stress gain isn't really all that much. The Twilight Knight loses almost as much as she gains, though I could see it as being more significant if she has quirks that increase her stress or you're in low light conditions. But this seems to just be a very strong ability overall, I think. Twilight Knight's final ability is Leap of Faith. It can be used from the back 3 rows against the front 2 rows of the enemy team, and it moves the Twilight Knight forward 2. This is how you get back to the front line if you get shuffled. It has a positive damage modifier of 10% to 30% scaling with rank. It also buffs your protection by 15 to 25%. You mark yourself for 1 turn, and you debuff your future damage by 20% and your dodge by 10% for the next 3 turns. This is a pretty solid ability. Anytime you find yourself not in the front row, you can use this to get back there. It does some pretty heavy damage. You debuff yourself, but it doesn't really seem that big of a deal. Even though your dodge is lower, gain that protection to help mitigate damage. And Leap of Faith does so much damage anyway. Losing 20% damage on your future attacks isn't that big of a deal usually. Unless you're on a boss fight or something, but you probably were using Leap of Faith to reposition anyway. Overall, it's a solid ability that you probably want to keep on your hotbar pretty frequently. The Twilight Knight has a couple of pretty useful camping skills. She can use the first story for 4 time points. It buffs everyone in your party by 10 dodge and 20% stress resistance. The dodge is okay. The Twilight Knight relies mostly on her dodge for defense, so getting a little extra can be helpful. But I think the main benefit of this skill is the stress resistance. If I was going into some place where I expected to get a lot of stress, like the Darkest Dungeon, maybe I would use the first story to help keep that in check. However, the Twilight Knight already has pretty good stress healing capabilities, so maybe you won't use it for that reason. But it's not a bad ability. She can use Talk to the Sword, which has a time cost of 3. The Twilight Knight loses 40 stress and gives it amongst her other companions, each of them gaining 13 stress. She also buffs herself by 5% crit and 10 accuracy. The 10 accuracy can be pretty nice against very evasive enemies, considering the Twilight Knight's low natural accuracy. So it's not too bad. The only issue I have is usually the Twilight Knight doesn't have a lot of stress because of Soothing Slash. So you're frequently not going to want to use this and give all your allies stress. But maybe if you were focusing on Glimmer of Hope a lot, Twilight Knight might have built up a bunch of stress and you could dump it that way. But it's just kind of okay. Her third camping skill is the Edge of Reason for 2 time points. The Twilight Knight has a 45% chance each to get 15% max HP, 15% damage, 3 speed, and a 35% chance each to get minus 10% max HP, minus 10% damage, and minus 2 speed. I'm not a huge fan of this. You can use herbs to cleanse off any debuffs you get, but I don't know if I want to spend that time points on trying to get those positive buffs. For less than a 50% chance, you're probably going to fail 1 or 2 of them at least, and then you still have to use herbs to get rid of anything negative. It's only 2 time points, but I don't think I'm going to use it all that much. On the other hand, her last camping skill is amazing! For 2 time points, you prevent nighttime ambush and reduce the chance that your party gets surprised by 20%. This is the cheapest nighttime ambush prevention that I know of that's guaranteed, except for like the Hood has that 1 time point chance to remove nighttime ambush, but that's only a chance it could happen. Still, Murmuring Lantern is great. 2 time points, and you prevent nighttime ambush. It doesn't get much better than that. You don't get any really nice buffs along with it, like the Houndmaster or the Highwayman with like Bandit Sense, but it's still pretty solid. A couple of facts about the Twilight Knight. She is non-religious, so she can work just fine with the Abomination. She benefits from the Outsider's Bonfire, like the Hellion or the Leper. As I mentioned before, her accuracy is a little lower than a typical hero. It's maybe a little better than a Vestal. Her highest accuracy ability is Leap of Faith, but otherwise her abilities are a bit on the low side. You'll feel like you're missing occasionally rather than always hitting like most of the other damage dealing classes. However, when she does hit, she hits very hard. So my typical skill setup would probably be pretty much always equip Soothing Slash. It's your basic attack, it's great. Leap of Faith, if you think you're going to get pushed back, or if you have a team that shuffles around a bit, that can be very useful. Glimmer of Hope, you pretty much want that on your hotbar all the time, unless your party's very low on stress. Anticipation's pretty solid. Whirlwind Attack is great in almost any situation, because it enables you to hit that 3rd row. Slay the Beast if you're in the Cove or the Warrens, and you want to be able to deal that heavy damage to Beasts or Eldritch. Strike to Stun if you want some more ability to delay fights and heal, but otherwise it's not an amazing stun. It's just kind of okay. Equip it if you feel like it, but I think typically I would probably use something like this: Whirlwind Attack, Anticipation, Leap of Faith. Seems pretty solid. In conclusion, Twilight Knight is a powerful frontliner. She has a few drawbacks in her mediocre speed and her accuracy, but I think her positives vastly outweigh that. She deals tremendous amounts of damage and keeps your party at low stress at the same time. I would probably consider her to be a little too strong overall. The only place I could see her struggling is against powerful backline enemies like Swine Skivers or Hateful Virago. In the pale moonlight, the sword speaks to you. Will you answer its call?